Alright, what is up, guys? I've decided I'm going to do a little bit of a rebuild for my hometown team. Um, as I sit here in the off season, I look at their roster and I see there's tons of holes. So we're actually utilizing current rosters. I've taken over as the general manager of the Minnesota Vikings. And I'm basically going to do what I can to try and get this team a Super Bowl. I think it's been long overdue. So, anyways, start out with what we had to do is so I've got the next year's draft class. I've got them installed, and I also have TFG's current roster as well. So what I went in and did is we actually gave Dalvin Cook a new contract. Now, the way things are sitting kind of currently is the Vikings are at, I think, what ends up being, I think they're about 13 million. I think 13.1 million currently in cap space, and Dalvin Cook currently is only making 1.3 million on his current contract. So, what I actually went in and did is I basically gave him a new deal, and this is essentially what the deal is. So he gets 2 million just for signing the deal. That's an automatic signing bonus because he is a running back with injury concerns. Obviously, I made it 4 years. He's, I believe, 24 years old. So by this time his contract's up, he'll be 28. That's kind of near the end of a running back's prime. I don't think that's the complete end of it, but I mean, a lot of running backs retire in their early 30s. So I've offered him 40 million, so he'll be getting about 10 million a year. I think it's ends up being about 11 million 2 or 3 years down the road. Actually, let me go into a different graphic. I can actually look. Let's see here. Trying to think, where can I was looking at something that was able. Oh, salaries. Here we go. Okay, so as you can see, Dalvin Cook. If we change the contract. Actually, wait. Let's do. Obviously, there's other players getting paid pretty damn well, but he's going to end up getting essentially, as you can see, about 2 million. He's going to get 9.78 million, then 10.2, then 10.7, then 11.3. And I figure because he's somebody who does have injury history, I wouldn't want to give him much more than that, but I do think he deserves to be at least paid like a top 5 running back because he is without a doubt a top 5 running back in the league. So I gave him a decent-sized contract. So he's going to be making about 10 million. With 2022, he's going to end up making 11.3 million. And this might be one of those things where maybe, I mean, I can see him. Well, I mean, I would like him to be around for the foreseeable future, ideally. So I signed him for 4 years. But so if we did that, we'd end up eating, what would it be, since it's about 9.8 plus the 2 million, so that'd be about 11.8 in cap to sign Dalvin Cook for this season, which would leave us 1.3 million in cap. So I've went and cut multiple pieces on the roster that I felt like honestly aren't even worth practice squatting. You know, guys like Sean Mannion, some other players here, but one guy that we can save a ton of money if we cut, and I'm going to go over here and I'm just going to sort this by net savings. As you can see, there's multiple guys that we do lose quite a bit of money for cutting. But one of the guys that we could save a lot of money by cutting and letting him go. Rashad Hill's getting paid $2 million as a backup. That's pretty good dough. He's pretty decent. Is Riley Reef. So he's been kind of an left tackle. I mean, TFG is clearly higher on him than I am with his 77 overall rating for him. He's clearly much higher, but I tend to feel Ezra Cleveland is going to end up being the future here. Maybe he won't be great right off the shoot, but I don't really have any intent. I don't think we're going to win a Super Bowl this year anyways, so I think the goal is to build for the next 2 or 3 seasons, kind of reload the roster, and then make another run at it. So I'm going to cut Riley Reef. Now, I am going to incur a penalty to my salary cap, but I think, honestly, for what his contract is, he is making far too much for being, at best, a okay left tackle, a decent left tackle. He's being paid essentially like he's one of the best in the league, and I really don't think he is. And, you know, as you can see, I mean, if I sort this by space I can cut, I mean, holy shit, what the fuck? Why is Garrett Bowles' contract that big? Whatever. As you can see, he's here. So he's essentially being paid like he's like a top 10 tackle, but to me, he is not. I don't believe he is, honestly. At best, I mean, you can see how many guys here. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. I mean, at best, he's about middle of the pack, and he's being paid like he's a top 10 tackle, and he's just certainly not in any stretch. So we're going to cut Riley Reef. Although what I can do, I don't want to progress through the preseason, though, because at that rate, some of the free agents might be eaten up. So while the free agents are still on the board and still available to sign, you know, I would prefer to keep it as is. So left tackle, Riley Reef. Not Riley Reed. I almost called him Riley Reed. We're going to end up releasing him. Now, we're going to incur some penalties here, but the cap space we're going to get is going to be very, very nice. So what that will end up doing is I think we would end up getting about 9.4 in cap, and then that would add to our 1.3. So then we'd end up having a 10.7. So what we can do with 10.7 is we can actually go to free agency here, and we can bring in some offensive linemen that I think we have honestly needed for quite some time. So first off, we're going to bring in a right guard. Currently, Drew Samia is slotted to start. Now, I think Drew Samia down the road could be a solid player, but is he ready to go in his second year right now as a starter? I don't think so. He didn't play too much last year. He did get one start, but didn't really have much time last season behind Josh Klein. So we're actually going to go in. We're going to sign Larry Warford. He was released by the Saints. We're going to sign him for $5.3 million, and that's going to eat about halfway into our cap space situation here. So we'll probably have about enough cap to sign maybe one more offensive lineman. But we're going to sign Larry Warford, and we're going to have him be our starting right guard. So you can see we're going to have Larry Warford starting here. And then probably going to need to sign somebody at left guard. I think Pat Elflein is just not going to cut it, honestly. I think Garrett Bradbury and Brian O'Neill definitely have potential to continue to get better. I think that, you know, is a reason to keep them around, right? Whereas Riley Reef's 31 at this point. I don't think he's really going to improve. He's kind of, I think, past his best. So Pat Elflein, I don't think he's a quality starter. So we're going to go to free agency again. We're going to see who we can pick up here to play left guard. So I think Kelechi Osemele, I mean, he would be a decent, he'd be a decent pickup in this situation. How much does he want? 6.65. So that would end up probably adding up to about, what would it end up being? About $12 million in cap space. He might be just a tad too expensive. We could pick up Cordy Glenn for a cheaper price. I don't think he'd be great, but he'd be okay. And then obviously Riley Reef's now available for free agency, but I think Cordy Glenn would generally be an upgrade, though, overall. Calvin Beachum. Jason Peters, I think, is just too old at this point. I don't think he'd be worth paying that kind of money for. Kind of a liability injury-wise, too. And, I mean, Kelechi Assembly, you kind of wonder, too, if he can stay healthy overall. So, you know, I was fine with signing Warford. Obviously, you have Ron Leary sitting here, too. He would be a decent signing for the Vikings, as I think he's a veteran. He'd be a decent right guard. So I think we're going to sign Cordy Glenn. I think Kelechi Assembly is just maybe a tad too much in the price department. So we're going to sign Cordy Glenn to the roster for $3.9 mil. So you add him and Warford together, and that ends up being, so what is it, $3.9 mil plus $5.3 mil. Ends up being about $9.3 million. So that would leave us, in theory, with about $2 million in cap space. So we could either let Ezra Cleveland start his rookie season, or we could sign a cheap left tackle, somebody who's, you know, not going to be amazing, but I could maybe just spot start if needed. And keep in mind, I have cut a few other pieces, too. I have cut some guys that I just don't feel like are worth playing. I mean, I generally think this rating is way too high. I think Riley Reef is realistically about a 71 or a 72 overall player. I really don't think he's any better than, you know, most of these guys. And as you can see, he's getting paid $9.4 million, even though this contract really, play-wise, he's about 5.75 million instead of 9.4. So he was about 3.5, almost 4 million, being paid more than he should be for his play. But you know, with my cutting of multiple guys and having multiple guys cut, I ended up cutting probably about 4 or 5 depth pieces that were worth probably around, I don't know, 3 to 4 million in cap. We're going to go out and we're going to get Kelvin Beachum. He's probably just going to be, we're going to have Ezra Cleveland with a we're going to give him a redshirt year where he doesn't have to start. We're going to have Kelvin Beachum instead. And he's not going to be amazing by any stretch. But I think he'll be decent, and, you know, realistically, Ezra Cleveland is the future, in my opinion. So this is essentially our new offensive line. We've looked to kind of bolster it around Kirk Cousins here and give him a little more stability in the pocket, as he's kind of struggled to have consistent play from his offensive line. So we've got Kelvin Beachum starting at left tackle. We'll have Cordy Glenn starting here. We'll have Garrett Bradbury with Brett Jones as the backup, and then Larry Warford starting at right guard, who I think is going to be a mauler. Definitely going to end up being probably the best player on this line. Cordy Glenn, I think, is going to be a decent spot starter. Definitely going to be an improvement over Pat Elflein, who I simply just don't think is worth having. I mean, honestly, at this point, I might cut him because we have Kyle Hinton. It might be worth cutting Pat Elflein at this point. I mean, after his third season, I really don't think we're going to see a whole lot from him in year 4. His rookie season had some promise, but he's just clearly regressed the last 2 seasons. He's just been atrocious. So I actually think we're going to let him go here. Let him go. That'll make some cap space. While in theory, he'd be a decent backup. I mean, worst case scenario, I think we can move Drew Samia over. We can move Brett Jones to guard if we need one of those guys. And Rashad Hill's going to be kind of our backup swing tackle, just in case of injury. So, yeah. And then if we look at other parts of this line and kind of see where we can go with this, I mean, I'm looking here. Anthony Zettel might be okay as a starter. James Lynch would probably be a decent player. Mike Hughes. The cornerback situation, I think, is okay. I think these 3 can probably do okay. I'd like to have maybe one more piece. Maybe we could go get somebody. I mean, if you're being realistic about it, though, I mean, if you look at what we've spent so far, so we spent 5.3 on. We spent what, about 4 million on Cordy. We spent about 5.3 on, or 5.35 on Larry Warford. And we ended up spending about 4 on Kelvin Beachum. Vikings probably won't have much in the way of cap space left after that. I I think the biggest complaint, if you go through their roster as a whole, I mean, I cut Sean Mannion. I don't think we need 3 quarterbacks, at least not right now. If Cousins does get hurt, we could look to sign somebody, but right now I don't think we need anybody. Although I don't think Cousins will get hurt behind this O-line. It's not going to be an amazing O-line, but it's going to be at least competent and be able to at least protect him somewhat. I mean, you look and maybe you say, well, is there another end piece we could get? Maybe we could get another guy at end here. But do we need it really, really badly? I don't necessarily think so. I think most of our roster is honestly good to go. So I think what we'll probably do here is, I mean, I'm going to look at corners. I think we'll take a quick peek, see who is still sitting here that we could take. Logan Ryan. I mean, Logan Ryan would be nice to have in the slot. Trumaine Johnson. Brandon Carr. Most of these guys I think are probably going to be a little too expensive. Ross Cockrell. Mac Alexander, who's actually on the Bengals. So I'm not sure why he's in free agency here, but that's fine. I'm not going to sign him anyways. Although, in theory, I think the Vikings should have kept Mackenzie Alexander. I think it was a bit of a mistake letting him go. I mean, ideally, if they were going to sign somebody, Logan Ryan, I think, would be the best corner to pick up. He'd be actually a good starter. Realistically, I mean, you could look to pick up a veteran safety as a backup in case of, either of these guys going down. Pick up one of these guys, but I don't think we need it that bad. Tony Jefferson, who's kind of a veteran. I think he'd probably be a decent piece to come in, although he'd probably be unhappy if he's not in a starting role. Because he is a starting caliber player. A lot of these guys, though. For right now, I think we can probably let it go. I mean, even though, I mean, we could look. I mean, what does Everson Griffin want? About $5.4 million. I think that's a tad too high for one season. I mean, he's not going to be. I mean, he's going to be a good starter, and I still think you're going to get stuff out of him. But I think with Michael Pierce being added to the roster, and I think realistically this team probably will still have a decent. I think we'll still have a decent pass rush. It may not be as good as before, and our defense may take a step back. But I think the goal this season is kind of shore up the offensive line and allow the Vikings offense to kind of take over more games instead of the Vikings being kind of a defensive first team, which I think is probably their biggest downside right now. I mean, I guess I could sign one of these veteran pieces for like a year. I could sign Vinny Curry for one season. Though I don't realistically think we will need him that badly. Perry, he wants a big deal. That's way too big. $6 million for a guy who's not that great. I don't really see it. Nigel Bradham. I know in a 4-3, Bradham could be useful. Cameron Wake, I think, is just far too old. Michael Kendricks could sign him to come play with his brother, although I think, again, his contract's a little too large. Zach Brown, Mason Foster. Could pick up Nigel Bradham. I think he might be a decent sign. What we could do with Nigel Bradham is put him at right outside linebacker. And then have him kind of, while Troy Dye is in his rookie season, I think Troy Dye is going to kind of be the future. Eric Wilson, he's not a bad player. I think he's shown some decent stuff. He's definitely shown he's better than Ben Gideon. But I don't know if, I mean, Nigel Bradham, I think he'd be a good piece. Right outside linebacker. I mean, Bradham would be a good depth piece, too, but I'm going to have Bradham come in here and play the right outside linebacker position for us, which I think he'd be better in, technically. He's more of a pass rusher. we look here, we look at more stuff. I mean, I'm trying to think if there's any other like holes that are like gaping to the point where like we're really gonna struggle. I mean, I get the feeling that I'm not really sure who's gonna pan out in the cornerback room. I think Gladney will end up being a decent player, but the issue is we've got Holton Hill, who's had problems with the marijuanas, and then you have Mike Hughes, who I think has potential, but obviously bad injury in his first season, tearing his ACL. And he was pretty shaky last season when he did play. So, I mean, do I give these guys a chance to continue playing? I mean, I think Holton Hill, honestly, I don't know. I don't know if he's gonna stop smoking the pot. Well, I mean that's fine. Literally, it's fine if he smokes pot, but I mean, realistically, he's just got to stop getting caught. That's the biggest problem. He smokes pot and then he goes and pees the next day, and they realize, oh, you're smoking that pot, yo. So I mean, we could bring in a guy here. We could bring in a veteran corner to come play the slot for us. We could bring in Trumaine Johnson. He'd actually be pretty decent for what his cap would be, and he's not nearly as old as most of these guys, unless we go down here. But I think most of these guys wouldn't be. They probably wouldn't be. I mean, they'd be starter, but I wouldn't think they'd be amazing. So we could have Trumaine Johnson come in and play slot corner for us, and then have Gladney and Hughes kind of playing the 2 and the 3. I think Trumaine Johnson would be a good signing, especially for the salary he kind of wants. I mean, he's a little on the older side at 29, so it's probably only be a 1-year signing, but Trumaine Johnson will bring him in. I think he could be a good piece, just so like Jeff Gladney isn't having to instantly be a starter in his rookie season, which could be a lot. Although I would like Jeff Gladney at the 3. So we'll have Trumaine Johnson, we'll have Mike Hughes, we'll have Jeff Gladney, then Hill and Dantzler, hold me closer. And then, I mean, I guess we could look at wide receiver depth, potentially. Although, I don't know if we need it that bad. A lot of these guys are very, very old, too. Not sure if any of these guys would be super useful. I mean, we don't... Paul Richardson would be okay as a deep threat for 2.7. He'd be okay. He's probably one of the only younger guys. Josh Gordon, I think he has just too many off-the-field issues for him to be, like, very useful. Like, long-term. Kenny Britt. Let's see, Anunwa. That's Williams. Taylor Gabriel. Taylor Gabriel could be a good pickup. As somebody who could just come in and instantly be kind of a spark plug to the offense. No, Kirk doesn't really have a deep threat at this point on the offense. It's kind of more of you have a possession receiver, you have a slot guy, and then Tajay Sharp. He's kind of also a physical possession receiver. We don't really have a deep threat. A guy who can go deep and completely burn people. And I'm not sure if I'm fully ready to have Olabisi Johnson in that number 4 role. I mean, I think he can play it realistically. I mean, how much more cap space do we have currently? 32. I mean, I don't know. I think I think the offense at least is semi-bolstered. I mean, I think we have enough firepower offensively that will be fine. We have multiple guys who can catch passes, so that's not a big deal. We've got multiple running backs. Got 2 tight ends that are both competent. We have an offensive line that can do we'll be able to block people. We're not going to have liabilities in Pat Elflein, and honestly, Riley Reif's not that bad, but for what he's getting paid, he's kind of a liability. Because there's other parts of the roster that aren't shored up because of him taking up so much space. So Tajay Sharp, BC Johnson. I think we'll go through the depth chart actually fully and just make sure I have everyone starting that I want. could have Irv Smith play at fullback too. That would actually be kind of fun. I could see that actually being kind of effective, but so we'll have Tajay Sharp play at the 3. BC Johnson will be the 4. Chad Beebe at the 5, even though I don't think Chad Beebe's going to make the team. Although we'll go through here and see if he does, but first see if he puts up any numbers in preseason at all. James Lynch, will have him be the 2nd D tackle. Shamar Stephan at the 3. Shamar Stephan's another guy that's probably getting paid a little too much for what he is. He's really a backup or 3rd string defensive tackle, and he's getting paid, I think, about $4 million a year. I think, what can we make if we cut him? Approved team. Because, like, depending on how, oops, I didn't want to go into free agents, actually. I just wanted to go into my roster here and see what I could get if I cut Shamar Stephan. Because Vikings do have a lot of depth. We've got Jaleel Johnson, Armon Watts, Jalen Holmes. So you do have, multiple guys here. Although we'd only save 500, oh, never mind. We wouldn't save that much if we cut him. It's not really worth it. I'd actually suffer a ton of penalty. Suppose we can go back to our main roster and see who would be worth cutting. Definitely, I mean, a lot of these guys are definitely star players, so no reason to cut them. I mean, there's no penalty if I sign these guys. I didn't sign any of them to guaranteed deals because they're all free agents. But I do want all of them on my squad, ideally. A lot of these contracts, though, are like ones that you're not really going to get out of. Anthony Zettel would clear up $1 million, but I think he's fine for what he is. I think this will be fine, though, realistically. Ben Gideon could make a little bit of space to get him, or to take him out the equation, but I don't think we need it that bad. I think we'll go through preseason here. We'll go in here. Shoring up the O-line should help Cousins. I think that's honestly been the biggest issue with the Vikings offense, is it's just like when the blocking is okay, their offense is very good, honestly. It's a top 10 offense, but when it's bad, they end up looking like a bottom 10 offense, and I think that really hurts them generally, especially in situations last season where their defense was kind of average, giving up a lot in the passing game. I'm actually going to sim this. I'm not going to play myself. Oh, okay. Well, I might have to play that game at least. Controller select's not available in this mode. Oh, maybe I shouldn't have done that, but we're going to sim our first game, the preseason here.
Let's go back.
So we are going to sim this. Play key moments. We'll do jump to next play. So we'll start out here. Just kind of see how the defense does. They actually give up a touchdown immediately. I think New Orleans is the highest rated team in this version of TFG's roster, and the Saints go down and score twice. They go and score 3 times. So a bit of a rough start to the preseason. Very, very rough start to the preseason. Oh, don't worry, guys. We got 3 points. We're good to go. Hey, it wasn't a lame duck. Oh, hell yeah. We put up some points at the end. It's fine. It's preseason. Not that big of a deal. Jameis Winston coming in as the backup, throwing 2 touchdowns. That's kind of cheating, honestly. They have, like, they basically have a starting caliber quarterback at backup, so. But upgrades, Dalvin Cook. Put that in elusive back. That'll make him 92. So our star running back just got a little bit better, which is going to be nice. Nigel Bradham, we brought in. We're going to upgrade his pass coverage since it fits the team that we're playing with the 4-3. Amir Abdullah got a point as well. Put that in elusive. Amir Abdullah, our number 3 running back, behind Cook and Madison. So can I look at the box stats and see how some of these guys played here? Stanley came in through 139 and a interception. Cousins threw a pick as well. Madison for 43 yards. BC Johnson with 6 catches, 97 yards. So actually impressing here in the first preseason game. Whereas I don't think Tajay Sharp really had any impact. No, he didn't. He didn't end up doing anything. So that's not bad. Defense, tackle for losses. Go Holton Hill with a tackle for a loss. Cole quit. Chad Beebe. Chad Beebe had 2 kick returns. General, Jeff Gladney played the most downs. Got to get the rookie some experience. We'll see. Yeah, actually, this would be better to look at this way, but I think our team is generally okay in most circumstances. At least a C+ there, and I don't think Logan Ryan would be worth that kind of money. I mean, he's a star, but don't think he's great. We could bring in another D tackle, to be fair. I mean, we got James Lynch, but we could bring in somebody that's, I mean, as you can see, some of these other free agents have been signed up here. Corey Leguet. Snack Harrison wants $6.5 million almost. I mean, that's not terrible for a guy that's really good against the run like him, but I don't think we necessarily need it. Still Darius would be a good piece. Xavier Williams, 27. Kind of looking at age. I mean, most of these guys are younger, so I can see why some of them were signed. $2.34 million. I mean, that's not bad. Might sign Xavier Williams here to a small $2.3 million deal. Have him as our number 2. Just because that's kind of one of our weaker spots, right end. I mean, Ziggy Ansah. Is there anybody over here that's relatively young? There's not really any super young players. Yeah, they're all, I mean, Randy Gregory, the issue with Randy Gregory is he's the type of guy that they'd have to rein him in. I think he could definitely be a starting caliber player, but he would have to be, I think they'd have to step in and actually, you know, keep him. Anthony Zettel probably isn't a starting caliber player, to be honest. I don't know. He'd probably be better in a backup role. I mean, Afadi's probably better in a backup role right now, although I think Afadi could definitely pop off if injury occurs. But Vinny Curry and Everson Griffin, I think both are just a tad too old at this point, 31. Both are aging quite a bit. Yeah, all these right tackles are generally much, much older. Not really any young linemen anymore. All these guys are generally age 30. Glenn Robinson, probably the only younger tackle prospect, but it is what it is. I mean, Kelechi Assembly's 30, but I don't think he's worth that money, especially with his potential to be hurt. But I think, as I've said before, I mean, we could look to get another quarterback. Brock Osweiler wants $2.37 million. I don't think Nate Stanley is realistically a backup. Blake Bortles could bring him in. Deshaun Kaiser could bring him in. Though I don't think he's going to end up being much better than Stanley. Osweiler. Could bring in Cam Newton on like a dirt cheap deal as like a backup. I mean, I don't think anyone's going to sign him realistically. I mean, if Cousins does get hurt, we might want to have a backup plan in this situation. I mean, realistically, I'd rather have Cam Newton than Brock Osweiler, although maybe Brock Osweiler would be better in a pure throwing sense, but I don't know. Cam Newton does have some mobility. Kyle Allen. I mean, we could bring in Blake Bortles on a dirt cheap contract. Kyle Allen already got picked up by the Redskins, and Nick Mullins is on another roster. I don't think any of these other guys are really worth getting. Brock Osweiler is a backup. I mean, Brock Osweiler, to be fair, I feel like he would, I don't know, he could be, in theory, he could be fine as a backup. With an okay offensive line, Osweiler is not, I mean, he's not a starter. He genuinely is not a starting quarterback. But as a backup, I think he could be decent, for sure. Got running back depth here. I mean, realistically, is Amir Abdullah going to end up being the guy? Probably not, but Phillip Lindsay got picked up. These guys are very overpaid for what they actually are. Alex Collins would be an okay pickup. Could have him as a third running back, although I would have to pay him, what, 2.14? It's not awful. I think C.J. Ham is probably better than any other fullback on the roster. So I think we're going to sign, we'll take a risk. We'll sign Randy Gregory. I think he might be worth that price. He is only 26, so we could, in theory, re-sign him for a couple more seasons after this one. So we'll sign him for $3.1 million. It'll give us a slightly better pass rush. Now, he's no Everson Griffin, but I think realistically, having him could be very, very useful. I think we'll go into what he got injured in that game, which is good. Depth chart. Brock Osweiler is our backup. B.C. Johnson was popping off. Kyle Rudolph. I mean, Chad Beebe could probably sign a really low-end wide receiver for about what he's paid, I think. Randy Gregory. So I'm actually going to do this. I'm going to put a Foddy. Foddy is going to be back up here. We're going to have, I think Zettel will be the backup on the other side. Where's Yarborough? He could be an okay third piece. He's young too. So we'll have Zettel backing up Randy Gregory. Xavier Williams, I think, will be an okay backup. Second string D tackle. We have Nigel Bradham, If Kendricks goes down, Bradham can take over the middle linebacker role. Honestly, I think I would rather have Gladney at the 2. I think he fits better in the scheme in general, if I had to be straight up. All right, we'll take one more look. I'm actually going to go and look at wide receivers and go see if there's anybody that would be decent. And Coleman. Not really many young guys at this point. I think anyone that was a bit on the younger side is pretty much gone. 27, I mean, here we could get another guy here, but I don't think we need it. And BC Johnson's young, so it's not the end of the world. We'll advance to next week, and we'll play Seattle. Wish I could watch some of the games, too. Realistically, I think right now there's a lot of young pieces on this Vikings team, and these guys have potential to be good. I think the main thing is, though, that right now I think it's better to at least give these rookies a season to learn some stuff before they just get thrown right into the fire. I think that's fair enough. So yeah, we'll sim this game. Like start out with a field goal. Seattle drives down, start of the second quarter, and scores. Second field goal here from us. Go down and score. 13-7 at halftime. Seattle goes down, gets another field goal. So 13-10. We score again. Nizu 20-10 going into the fourth. We drive down, we score again, 27-10, and it looks like we do win our first home preseason game at US Bank. Brock Osweiler threw for 100 yards. Cousins threw one pick, but did throw a touchdown. Mir Abdullah getting some carries in the second half of this game. Looks like putting up some decent numbers. Not too shabby, not too shabby. What's my uptime? 43 minutes. So I'll probably call the video here shortly. Actually, I might make one more. We'll do one more thing. I'll check. These older guys still around? Yeah, most of them are. Greg Robinson is. See if there's any like deep depth guys that we could pick up that would be valuable. All these guys we'd have to trade for at this point. Jabal Sheard is available, actually. Although he wants a big deal. He wants a huge contract for a 30-year-old. Chris Wormley. Yeah, as you can see, most of these free agents have been eaten up at this point. Clay Matthews is still sitting here, but there's not really a ton of options. Some of these older corners are still here. Avonte Maddox, although they want a left tackle for him. I don't think we need another corner. Antoine Bethea still sitting here. I mean, he's a very Kendrick Lewis, I think, is someone we could sign as a depth piece. I think he'd be a decent depth piece as well. Just a fifth guy in the safety room here because we do I think age in this position doesn't actually matter that much. Gilchrist, Tavon Wilson, Jalen Mills, who's been moved to strong safety. Shot Jones, although I think he's starting caliber probably, so. Brian Cole's 23, Josh Metellus is 22. Although I think Anthony Harris is, yeah, he's 27. So, in this situation, I think I may just sign Kendrick Lewis. I don't think any of these guys really fit my scheme that well. As Marcus Gilchrist does. Tavon Wilson does too. He's 29. Don't think Brian Cole's probably ready to start yet. So I am going to sign, I think we'll sign Tavon Wilson to a $1.5 million deal. Have him as our backup safety in the situation. If Harrison Smith does go down, we'll have somebody who can come in and spot start. But otherwise, I think that's probably going to do it for now. Thank you guys for watching. Appreciate it. And on part 2, I think we will finish out the rest of the preseason and we will get to the regular season.